Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Sunshine Coast Regional District Electoral Area Services Committee for Thursday, February 19th. I'd like to acknowledge we are meeting here today on the territory of the Sechelt peoples, and also we are participating within the area of the Squamish as well. We have representatives from that area. Today in our agenda, first I'd like to start off by asking for a motion to permit Director Toth to participate in the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. Have motion, seconder. All those in favor? Thank you very much. And with the agenda, I would like to add under 7, new business. So if I could have a motion to add a brief community update statement regarding Cliff Gilker Park bridges under new business. Okay, seconder. All those in favor? And that passes. Finally, I'd like a motion to accept staff reports as presented. Seconder. All those in favor? Passes. And we're going to adopt the agenda as amended. First, seconder. Yep. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. So our first item today is 4.1, the official community plan housing technical memo. And we have somebody to introduce that. Planner Thompson.
Thank you. Housing is one of the 2 pillars for the OCP renewal project. The purpose of this technical memo is to support directors and the community with further understanding of housing capacity under current zoning and the implications of a business as usual scenario from both a housing and an infrastructure cost perspective. While this technical memo assesses the affordability of certain forms of housing, it is not focused on non-market housing specifically. Staff prepared this memo, which has 5 areas of discussion: current housing capacity under SCRD's existing planning framework, current uptake of ADUs and secondary suites, drivers of new home construction, costing of ADUs and affordability implications, and the cost implications of the current planning framework on infrastructure and services. Key findings include that under the current land use bylaws, the SCRD has authorized sufficient development to meet legislative housing needs. Existing housing development capacity is widely distributed across the region, mostly as single-family dwellings, suites, and auxiliary dwelling units, small, size-limited single-family dwellings. This poses certain challenges, including the cost of the built form that are permitted does not meet affordability needs of residents, actual construction of currently permitted units is low, providing services to dispersed housing can be less cost-efficient than other development patterns, or can be impractical, for example, providing transit services. As part of Phase 2 of public engagement, SCRD is asking questions about approaches to housing delivery that seek to address some of these issues through the identification of areas that are suitable to accommodate growth. Approaches could include greater diversity of housing and options for supporting and facilitating new tenures like rental housing and nonprofit housing in electoral areas. Housing policy options and approaches will be brought forward to the board for consideration after Phase 2 is complete, and this will allow technical analysis and community feedback to inform the options. Thank you.
Committee members, any questions of clarification?
No, not clarification.
Oh, okay. Director Bex.
Thank you. Thank you, Senior Planner Thompson. Avid radio listener, and sometimes I catch glimpses of councils from other areas. Nanaimo, I was listening to the other day, and something that they've been doing with their OCP renewal is pre-zoning for things like cooperative housing. Is that something that's possible within the regional district to allow for a housing co-op to exist with being pre-zoned? Would save time and would save money for that type of endeavor. Is that something that we as an organization are contemplating?
I would say it's premature to say that we're contemplating it, but it would certainly be one of the list of potential policy directions that could be contemplated after phase 2 of engagement.
Alternate Director Beatty?
Thank you, Planner Thompson. So I'm curious if you have data on the distribution of the auxiliary dwelling units by electoral area.
I don't have that in this analysis, but we would have that through the building inventory report from BC Assessment, so we could follow up on that.
I think that would be interesting considering the point around the need for the availability of housing to match where people want to live. I have another question. Through the chair. I'm curious how you define auxiliary dwelling units in the methodology and whether there's any awareness of if the existing units are being used for short-term or long-term rentals.
Planner Thompson?
Thank you. Through the chair. To the latter point first, we don't have information on the usage of those units. It's one of the challenges of tracking what's known as secondary rental market data. It's simply not tracked by anybody, including BC Assessment or BC Housing or CMHC. To the first point, when we talk about auxiliary dwelling units, we're typically talking about separate units. Like in this context, we're talking about single-family homes, secondary suites within a single-family home, and auxiliary dwelling units would be units that exist as a separate structure on the same property. In an urban area, that might be called a laneway cottage or a backyard suite. However, the two zoning bylaws do define ADUs differently, so we've tried to use a relatively high-level definition here, which is that separate suite. But it's one of the reasons why we're looking at alignment between the two OCPs is because of, or sorry, the two zoning bylaws is because of the different definitions.
Director Gabias.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. Yeah, and thank you for the report, for this additional technical memo. My big takeaway is that we're kind of in a tough spot. I think a lot of people are thinking that gentle density, so adding more ADUs would be a really good solution to our housing crisis, but it would, I mean, the costs are so eye-watering. It's incredible. And so, you know, and also we don't know, to alternate Director Beatty's point, like we don't know if these would be used as long-term or short-term rentals. And so like kind of digging ourselves out of this like housing crisis, I think it's going to take a lot of innovative thinking and, you know, not doing business as usual or thinking outside the box, however you want to call it. Because what we're seeing now is one of the only affordable options is people are starting to live in their RVs full time. So we're seeing more of these, you know, unplanned campgrounds, long-term RV living happening. And so I think a case could be made maybe to think of a rural housing strategy, because there's so many specific challenges that we're facing, whether it's, you know, the RV, long-term RV, short-term rental, seasonal population. And so question to Senior Planner Thompson is like, are other regional districts looking at rural housing strategies, and what would be the most effective sequence, considering that we're in the middle of the OCP process? Like if something like that was to be put forward, when would be the right time to bring it up?
Through the chair, I am specifically familiar with Regional District of Nanaimo, which I think has just embarked on a rural housing strategy. And I think within, you know, recent months they've announced it, so I think it's still in very early phases. In terms of scoping, I wouldn't necessarily want to presuppose anything, but one potential timing structure would be to complete the OCP and have an outflow of that leading into a rural housing strategy if the board were to decide to go in that direction.
Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 10 of the agenda package where it talks about, an ADU and the construction cost between 400 and 455,000. And then on page 12, where it started, KPMG undertook some unit costing. And I'm wondering if, that to be perfectly frank, that number is horrifying, that it costs that much to build an auxiliary dwelling unit. And I'm wondering if staff have given any contemplation to areas where there may be ability either within market or with advocacy effort that the board might undertake or something to try and drive down some of the hard cost, like the hard costs that are here. Because if you look at the 450 and the 300 to 350 a square foot, there's about $100,000 in financing, site servicing, building permits, GST, that sort of thing. But how can we drive prices for construction down in any way, shape, or form? I'm wondering if staff have given any contemplation to that, because even prefabbed housing is right in this $300 a square foot range. So factory built is not even any cheaper right now. Thanks.
Any suggestions you may have or how we may move forward on that? This really critical problem that we can see outlined in the technical memo.
Through the chair, at a high level, impacting construction costs is obviously well outside the scope of what local government can do. But when it comes to new approaches, there are a variety of potential policy tools, from increased density to expedited approvals times, that other local governments have used. I believe that there is some consideration being given as we move into later phases of the OCP to continue testing policy options through a similar kind of pro forma framework like this, to see where local government may, or the SCRD may be able to move the needle a little bit.
And just to follow up on that, I understand like there's some movement provincially for the allowance of tiny homes and how those can be approached, whether they're part of the solution. But it's this whole range of how do we look at zoning around density? Because we do already have the ability to accommodate extra homes right now, but are they the homes that we need? And that's the question we're looking at the OCP. I'll go to Director Lee.
I can wait, Chair. I was just trying to get in the list. Just to follow up on that last one, how to drive costs down. Our contractors have a lot of proposals, not all for just regional districts. One that was mentioned to me last night, for instance, is that provincial regulations where you have to have a new house warranty. Well, why would you have to have a new house warranty on a second dwelling on a lot, for instance? Some of those regulations don't make sense, and our contractors can definitely help us with that aspect. The other one, though, is a little bit about this technical memo on page 9. You kind of indicate that permission shouldn't be given to regional districts to have more development because there's no transit service and we don't have amenities in and around where our housing is already being built. And that's kind of in contradiction to what's happening right now when you consider that Pender's around half of the total new housing that's being built. We need to be pretty careful of what policy we are suggesting here. And I don't know of people that just depend entirely on a bus. Everybody usually has access to a car of some kind, whether it's a friend or themselves. And with the new electric vehicles we've got, I'm not so scared of cars anymore. The biggest problem I saw with cars was the pollution they cause. And with the electric vehicles, that's gone. So I don't even know if I like this technical memo having that in it. But anyways, I guess it's there. I don't have that much objection. The OCPs should look after it when we get there.
I mean, it is a fair comment, and specifically that is a comment specifically for Area A, if I'm not correct. That's what they're talking about, is some of the challenges around Area A. But if you do want that removed or different discussion around that, now's your opportunity through a motion.
I don't see very many buses on the island.
We don't do planning for the islands.
Yeah, but we do for Nelson Island. We do for a lot of areas. Anyways, yeah, that's probably maybe Area A only, but it is definitely a concern of Area A.
So again, you are welcome to make changes to the technical memo if you want. But I'll let you think about it, and then I'll follow up with the question I had.
No, the technical memos are just guidelines to start discussions, and that's been stated from the very beginning, so I'm okay with that. Yes, thank you.
Through this technical memo, how are we looking at options with the OCP with this process to work with the plans with the municipalities? Because we don't just plan housing on this Sunshine Coast alone. We're doing it in relation to the municipalities who have other plans. How are we planning to plan? How are we planning to coordinate across the region?
To the chair, we've had ongoing collaboration with the town of Gibsons and the district of Sechelt around housing needs, and for example, the CLDA collaboration where regional district staff sat with the district of Sechelt around an evaluation of their lands. We've been part of the referral process, and we continue to have regular meetings with planning staff from both municipalities, the topic of which is often housing. So there's, I would say, considerable knowledge between different jurisdictions around what each is planning, and of course there are the formal avenues like referral processes. But you know, in terms of the baseline collaboration, we also have the regional housing coordinator who meets regularly with local government staff from the town, the district, and the regional district.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Gabius.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to take advantage of Planner Thompson being here to ask a question about mobile home parks. So they're becoming maybe a more like an attractive option now. I'm thinking of Big Maple, and if the planner has some information on what kind of conditions need to exist in order for mobile home parks to become an attractive development or an attractive option for a developer, like in whether there's, you know, Mr. Thompson has experience with that, or any information on what needs to be in place for developers who want to do that kind of development.
Do you have any comments on that?
Just briefly, I mean, I think the one precondition that the regional district controls is zoning for mobile homes, and I do want to distinguish between mobile home parks or communities versus RV parks and communities, because RVs are not sort of recognized as permanent housing, whereas mobile homes are. Generally speaking, if the land use permissions are in place, I couldn't speak to the infrastructure requirements and the costing of that these days. I believe many of the mobile home parks that exist on the coast have been present for quite a while, so I'm not sure what that would cost. But from our perspective, I think it would be land use and infrastructure. There is the question of location and access. You know, siting these larger parcels may not necessarily be in close proximity to existing transit amenities or infrastructure, so that may be a challenge or consideration moving forward.
Thank you. Any other comments, Alternate Director Beatty?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm curious, this report has a rough estimation of the amount of ADUs that have legal suites on it versus just the amount that may not be legal. And I am just kind of curious about what the conversations have been around those, and if there's kind of like what you would propose to do with the suites that may have lack of clarity around their use and legality and availability to support housing needs.
That may be a question that bylaw can answer better, but I would say that it is an enforcement, or a complaints-based enforcement protocol. So we wouldn't be responding to looking to shut down suites that are illegal unless we receive complaints about them.
Any other comments? Does anybody like to put the motion forward on page 3? Director Gabias?
Happy to put forward the recommendation, move the recommendation, and then I have a question.
Do we have a second? We have a seconder. And what's your question?
Yeah, just want to touch a little bit more on year-round RV living, which has become an increasing occurrence all around the province and probably the country. So I guess, is there a way, or through the OCP, that we can look at how, because right now we're not counting those units, quote unquote. There's no data, and as far as I understand, there's no real way of determining whether they're safe for the people who live in the RVs and also for people who live around there. So is there a way through this process, through the OCP process, that we can address some of the challenges, or is it out of scope of this project?
Planner Thompson. That's a hard one.
Through the chair. There are certainly elements of it that are within scope, the siting and location and land use around RVs and campground designations, but much of it in terms of enforcement and wraparound support is outside the scope of this. And as I'd mentioned, Regional District in Nanaimo as an example, they're looking at their rural housing strategy as an opportunity to address some of those issues. So it may be a kind of implementation or a follow-on piece.
Okay, I see no other questions. We have a recommendation on the table. I'd like to call a vote. All those in favor? And anyone opposed? And that passes. Thank you, staff. Now, 4.2 is Pender Harbor Aquatic Society Agreement Renewal, and that's on page 13. And that's a request for decision from the committee. And who's speaking to this? Manager Call.
It's great to be here. Staff are pleased to present this report recommending the renewal of the Pender Harbor Aquatic Society Agreement for another 5-year term. Over the years, the Society's role has evolved from oversight to more of a local advisory role, providing input, expertise, and a community perspective to support the effective operations of the facility. Staff look forward to continuing to work with the Society and are happy to answer any of the committee's questions. Thank you.
Committee members, comments, questions? Looking at Director Lee. Go ahead.
No questions. The society has been quite valuable over the years to put forward the concerns and the accolades that come with our pool. And so I'm very pleased to see this recommendation, and I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations as listed on page 13.
And I see a seconder. Any more comments or questions? Seeing none, I'd like to call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. there's been a few hands down, so. So our next series, 4.3 to 4.7, are electoral area advisory minutes. Rather than going through them each individually, do any of the directors, would they like to pull some action items out of the minutes? Or you'd like to just see them go through as presented? Director Gabias.
Yeah, I think just a comment. I saw like the comments on the unsightly, I can't remember, accumulation of unsightly something. And so great comments from everybody. I think there is concern that this could be used for like frivolous complaints. So good feedback for staff to make sure that it's a, nice, strong amendment, and so that there's no, so that it reduces the risk of this being perceived as, a way for people to complain about their neighbors, because there is a real issue out there. But yeah, it was nice to see the comments and what everybody thought about it.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was impressed how Area F really nailed down, let's not get too crazy here. Only the most egregious issues should be considered. So that was, I really appreciated that. Any other comments? And there were no real action items that were outside the initial questions. So those minutes will go through for consideration. So if there's nothing further on the area advisory minutes, I'd like to move to communications and 5.1. And that is a communication from Peter Drones from Pender Harbor and Area Residents Association. Is there anyone speaking to this? It was just received for communication. Director Lee, you had a comment about it.
No, I'd like to make a motion in support of the letter if there's no further comments. Chair? Okay, thank you. First off, I don't see a need to ask for staff to assist, as one of the requests were. And that's because, first of all, we don't really help with grants for nonprofit associations, but if they want help to identify grants, we do that anyways. We don't need to assign staff to that. And we also don't provide technical advice on septic design. That's something that we ourselves would hire an engineer to do if we were replacing a septic system. So, and if we decide to go the route of including it in our OCP, that we would like, the community would like a sewer system in there, that would be part of the OCP upgrade. So I don't see a need to pass a motion on that, but I would like to make a motion on the first part of the request, and that is the SCRD provide a letter to the Pender Harbor and Area Residents Association indicating our support in principle for the establishment of a sewer/wastewater system for the downtown core of Deer Park.
Do I have a seconder? Director Gabias, any comments? Director Bax.
Sorry if I'm not, if I'm a little distracted. There's been a personal tragedy that I'm trying to deal with at the same time. But my question is, the downtown, the Pender Harbor Downtown Association is going to take responsibility for this facility and maintain it through the years, or is it going to end up under the auspices of the regional district?
I'm not sure we're sure yet, but Director Lee.
That's the correct statement. We're not sure. The initial request to petition us, if they decide to go that way, would talk about that aspect of it. And in provincial regulations, if it's a certain size of a water treatment plant, septic treatment plant, we have no choice but to take it on. So the fact is it's unknown yet. Typically, though, in Pender Harbor, the SCRD is asked to maintain the system and enhance the system because we have all the expertise, you know, and typically if you find one that's not being looked after by the SCRD, it's because the co-op or has expertise in-house and it's cheaper for them. And so there is a few that are done that way in Pender that are looked after by the people that live in the area that have the small wastewater plant. So, yeah, we don't know yet. It's
Staff, Senior Manager Rosenblum, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Maybe just more general comment. It's correct that staff feels that the appropriate process would be that if the SRD were to outline that this would be an area of preferred growth, then as part of the OSP process, there might be policies in place resulting of that guide our involvement in these kind of projects moving forward. The SRD currently doesn't have any policy or associated document that guides which requests to take over a treatment plant we accept or not. It's correct that the ministry requires certain plants to be operated by local government, but it doesn't require us to actually accept a facility. It just means that if an organization or a developer proposes a facility to be part of his development, the SRD can say no to that because we don't want to take that over. So there are still all kind of opportunities for us to make decisions on this. The question I would have for the board is to consider what is actually the intent of the support that is expressed in the letter. What is the short-term, long-term support that is expressed by providing a letter of support? Thank you.
That's a good question because how would we provide this support? And I'm wondering if the motion itself needs a bit more clarification for that.
I believe the letter of support is simply to support them in getting a grant to do the technical study. It's not beyond that. It's as the letter says.
Is it worth adding that clarification into the motion? Do you want to read the motion again, just to make sure?
That the SCRD provide a letter to the Pender Harbor and Area Residents Association indicating our support in principle for the establishment of a sewer wastewater system for the downtown core of Madeira Park.
Go ahead, Director Lee, and then you've got another question.
They're requesting support in principle that we agree that there should be a septic system, sewer system in the village core of Madeira Park. That's all. It's not saying we're going to build it or anything like that.
Thank you.
Director Bax.
Thank you. A lot of whispering going on. But one of the things that I'm of the understanding is that when these type of facilities are constructed and then the SRD takes control of them, they're still a user fee. They're 100% user paid for system. Is that the case? That like at my co-housing in Roberts Creek, it's the people that are from that live in the co-housing, they pay 100% of the cost for their wastewater treatment plant. And so I imagine in Pender Harbor, it would be the same. And so it's not a taxpayer thing. And so I think that's an important distinction for us to understand. And if that's the case, I'd like confirmation from staff.
I'm just going to clarify with staff first, and I'll get back to Director Lee. General Manager Rosenboom, do you have a response, or corporate officer have a response?
Either or. For this service, it would require a service area to be established specific for this wastewater treatment plant, most likely. So yes, there will be then user fees and parcel taxes to be provided by the service, to be funded by the service participants.
Corporate officer?
Thank you, Chair. So if I'm understanding, this may have to go through an electoral approval process. My concern would be if the board passes a resolution to support it in principle, you may fetter decision-making on that process in advance. So my recommendation might be to allow that process to unfold and wait until the electors perhaps weigh in.
Any further questions arising out of that? Director Lee?
Yes, I was just asked further clarification of our corporate officer in that if a community group comes forward with a proposal for a new septic system, are we automatically obliged to go to the next step if they have petitioned the service area people and the majority want it? Can we say yes or no at that point?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that would come forward to the board in the form of a petition, and the board at that time, there would have to be a feasibility in advance of that. So the board would have advance knowledge before we went out to seek elector approval. It would come forward. And at that time, you could express whether you wish staff to proceed on that basis.
Follow-up?
Yes. With that in mind, I was wondering what pre-issued letter of support could cause a change to that process. I think that's a standard process. So do I need to get the motion in a different wording? Or
Well,
what?
this is what I'm wondering, because I think part of what the community is looking at is if they're to apply for any kind of supports or grants, they need some kind of letter of support from the regional district. But then the regional district doesn't want to fetter itself. So that we're sort of in between here. And I'm just wondering if there's recommendations. Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I really struggling with this because it seems like we're overcomplicating the question here. FARA's looking to go seek out a grant to do the technical study. And it's just support for them to go out to do the grant. We provide letters of support for organizations to do grants on a monthly basis around here. It doesn't mean that we're going to take on what the organization is getting a grant for when they're done with it. And honestly, even if FARA undertakes a technical study and a technical analysis, and then they do petition to provide the service, like the SCRD is probably still going to have to do a separate technical assessment to make sure that it's feasible from the government taking it over perspective. So like there could end up being a lot of studies being done on this establishment of a new wastewater system in Pender Harbor. And I think this is just the area trying to figure out if it's even technically feasible, never mind legislatively or who's going to own it or who's going to run it. I think they just want to know if it's going to be technically feasible. Thanks.
Corporate officer?
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps the wording of the motion could be amended slightly. As I read it, it is support in principle for the establishment of a service. And that's the portion of the motion that could be problematic should we go forward with elector approval. So if the support in principle is for the exploration of a new service, that would say something differently.
The exploration of the service and their support for the grant process.
I think corporate officer probably hit it on the nose, because that exploration would include probably a grant. So I think if we changed it to that, but now I'm trying to figure out how it would read. Our recorder probably could tell me better.
Recorder, have you made some magic? Let's see, because we do have a motion on the floor. We seconded it maybe a little too quickly. So we can vote on the motion, vote it down, and then create a new one. It might be cleaner than trying to adjust. So if you could read, let's vote on the original motion and then go back to one that's a little bit more specified. And that will help us, I think. So we have a motion on the floor for recommendation. It was seconded. All those in favor? And that does not pass. So now we're going to try again. So we had some ideas thrown at you. Would you like to try it? Director Gavias.
Yeah, so we're talking about exploring a new service, but like, to me, my mind is not down to the SCRD establishing a service. They're trying to build a wastewater plant, which may or may not be taken on by the SCRD. So like the way I read the letter is like, yes, they're looking for a letter of support so that they can apply for a grant to do a feasibility and engineering study for a wastewater plant, which may or may not become a service. So I don't, like, to me, the exploring a service is even too far. But
Too much. So do we have just a basic motion that says we support in principle in terms of for the grant? Director Lee.
I had my magic pencil out here. That the SCRD provide a letter to the Pender Harbor and Area Residents Association indicating our support in principle for exploration of a sewer wastewater system for the downtown core of Madeira Park. I believe that's what the corporate officer was suggesting.
I want to make sure Autumn got it.
That the SCRD provide a letter to the Pender Harbor and Area Residents Association indicating our support in principle for their exploration of a sewer wastewater system for the downtown core of Madeira Park.
Sounds good. Do I have a seconder? There we do, Director Gavias. Okay, any more comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Yes.
yeah, like, just while we're talking about wastewater plants, and it's always struck me that we have like all these different wastewater plants that are been built by different developers that all have their quirks and personalities. And I'm wondering if staff has a plan to maybe standardize the wastewater plants that we'll build from now on, or like if there's going to be some requirements from developers to adhere to certain standards, or so that it's a little easier for when the SCRD takes on these that infrastructure, that it's actually, the knowledge is there, the experience is there within staff already.
Does staff have any comments on that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. One of the projects on the work plan is the updating of bylaw 320, which is the subdivision servicing standard. And one of the contemplations is to standardize our requirements for any wastewater treatment plants that we would, before we take them on as part of that bylaw update. Thank you.
So thank you. I think we're finished with communications. There are no other communications. We have no motions. I do have under new business, just a statement I'd like to read out regarding the Cliff Gilker bridges. I just want to acknowledge the community, the concerns related to the bridge closures at Cliff Gilker Park. Last weekend, the SCRD became aware of social media posts showing that one of the bridges in Cliff Gilker Park, previously closed for safety reasons, had been reopened to the public. Staff have since closed the bridge again. The board recognizes coast residents are eager to see the park's bridges reopened. The current closures are in place to protect public safety. Work completed outside of the planned remediation process can create significant safety and liability concerns, even when undertaken with good intentions. An update on the bridges at Cliff Gilker Park will be available next week. A report is being brought forward to next Thursday's Committee of the Whole as we work to move the Cliff Gilker Park remediation project forward. And that report will be available to review for the public tomorrow late afternoon. Updates on the project can be found on the Let's Talk site, Cliff Gilker, at the scrd.ca website. So that's where we'd like to stand right now. And I don't think there's any other comments. So there's no new business, and I'd like to take the opportunity to move in camera at this point. So if somebody would like to read that out. I'm just wondering, we should ask any questions from the gallery. So, yeah, and then ask questions, right?
Okay, I move that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91E and K of the Community Charter, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal services are at their preliminary stages, in that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were to be held in public.
All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. So I'm wondering if there's any questions arising from the gallery. So is it, okay, go ahead. Can you come up to the mic so that we can hear you online?
It's public record.
Is that better? Okay. A simple point about the technology of wastewater systems, fast evolving. So what might work for one of the older systems like Langdale would be quite different from probably what we would entertain. It would be much more compartmentalized and use different technology, advanced technology. So I'm not an engineer, but I'm learning these things. That was my comment. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there any questions online? Ms. Jordison? Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we'd like to clear the public gallery and 3-minute break. Good afternoon. Are we open? Yeah. Good afternoon. We're coming back into the public portion of the Electoral Areas Services Committee. If there's no further business, I would like to adjourn the meeting. Moves seconded. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Goodbye.